Alright, new year, but not quite a new me, as we're back with another episode of How Long Until Satch Destroys His Mental Health, and today I am going to be attempting to defeat 1,000 Blight Fathers in a single game of zombies. There may be a few of you sitting there watching this and thinking, but how, Satch? How will you defeat 1,000 Blight Fathers in a single game? That's impossible. But that's not quite the case. You see, a few months ago, I made a video on this channel where I defeated 1,000 Brutuses. Whatever the plural of that name is, I beat 1,000 of them in a single game. And I did this by using one of the best game modes Treyarch have ever given us, custom mutations. Now, unfortunately, custom mutations has only ever been in one Call of Duty, which was Black Ops 4. And it will probably also never see the light of day ever again, as sadly, it wasn't really deemed much of a success. This mode basically just allows the player to pick and choose almost everything that is in a single game of zombies. You want to be a dumbass and fight 1,000 Blight Fathers? You can. Maybe you want to limit how many times the box can be hit each round. You can. Maybe you want to limit what power-ups can drop and how many around. Well, guess what? You can. So I got to work coming up with a few rules, and here they are. The kill cap was set to 1,000, meaning once I get my 1,000th Blight Father kill, the game would just automatically end and I would win. Power-ups. In the previous version of this, almost every single Brutus that I would kill would then drop a power-up. And as you can imagine, having that many power-ups drop made things just a little bit too easy. So for this, I limited how many power-ups would drop to 5 a round, and also halved the drop rate. Mini-boss was set to only, and the spawn rate set to quadruple. Which, let me tell you, that's a lot of bloody Blight Fathers. I do also turn off all the other enemy options, just to make sure. I don't want to have to fight a bunch of Blight Fathers and then also be bombarded with a bunch of gladiators, 1,000 Blight Fathers, it's kind of enough. And lastly, all of my settings, the player settings, were kept to default, just to maybe try and even things out a bit. I didn't want any more penalties, just, because it's me playing, and that's a penalty enough. Now, usually, at this point in the video, I'm full of confidence and eagerness to show off just how well I did in the challenge. Well, you see, I've already lived through what you're about to witness, and quite frankly, it's a complete shit show. Defeating 1,000 Brutuses, I'm just gonna go with that. It seems the most right, Defeating him filled me with so much false confidence. In that video, I think it was maybe my second, third attempt at most when I actually completed my goal. Therefore, I went into this thinking it was gonna be much of the same. I mean, Blight Fathers aren't that difficult to kill, right? Well, spoilers, they are that difficult to kill. Granted, I may have jumped the gun a little bit on this attempt by not actually setting up a class with a proper starter weapon and perks and whatnot, but what was the worst that could happen? Oh, what was that? I got one kill and died in round 1? Huh, yeah. Maybe it is that difficult. So, with the first attempt out of the way, I went back to the drawing board. I picked out my Strife, and I got it set up in a way that would work for fighting Blight Fathers. I also picked up the Wraith Fires and the Hammer of Valhalla. I opted for 4 decent perks that also fit the same bill, being Stamina Up, Bandolier Bandit, PhD Slider, and Quick Revive. I have hardly any elixirs or medallions or whatever they're called on this game, so I honestly just kind of stuck with the defaults in those 2 areas. With my new and improved setup, it was time to get back to the action. I almost immediately noticed that the Strife was the one. Actually having a weapon that is somewhat competent at taking down the Blight Fathers early game was going to be huge, and the Strife was it. But there was one other big problem I was beginning to see, and that was my lack of points. Shooting and killing the Blight Fathers isn't actually very rewarding, and I won't lie, this was a bit of a worry. But at the time, it was something that I wasn't really that worried about, and I was honestly kind of thinking it's something that future Satch can worry about. My plan for this game was to get the Circuit's Kiss, and then possibly a Hades or a Zweihander for points, which I would hold on to until I got the Hellion, where I could then just go to town. But first I needed to Pack-a-Punch a weapon. So I headed up to the first summoning to get that started, and then I saw that I actually couldn't activate them. I honestly have no idea why, but I guess it's because they spawn enemies that I had turned off. I'm not quite sure though. So I quit out of that game and I switched around some settings. Although I did manage to go from 1 kill in my first attempt to 10 in the second attempt, putting me at exactly 1% completed. Talk about off to a flying start, huh? Attempt 3 it was. And remembering back to where I said points would be a problem, I may have decided to allow myself 5,000 starting points. And look, before you say anything, this map is bloody expensive, okay? And it's not like the Blight Fathers are putting up any, so just leave me alone. With my new and totally legitimate cash flow, I headed back up to Raw, only to once again notice that I still couldn't activate Pack-a-Punch. and you guessed it, back to the drawing board as I switched around a few more settings. Luckily for me, custom mutations allow you to have Pack-a-Punch turned on at all times, meaning you can bypass any steps prior to accessing it, making attempt 4 my best possible chance at actually having a good run. And it was looking like it might just be that, as I managed to pull the VKM out of the box. Not the best weapon in the world, but an LMG is certainly better than nothing. Without wasting too much time, I had it Pack-a-Punch, and it was finally time to put a dent into these 1,000 kills. That was at least what I was hoping anyway. As it turns out, the VKM is it's actually pretty pathetic, as it was taking upwards of 50 bullets just to take out one enemy on round 4. And it's safe to say I was pretty screwed, and we end up taking our first down of the game here, and then a second down shortly after, and finally we take our third and final down shortly after that, and it was safe to say this was going to be pretty damn tough. However, there was a shining light. Attempt 5 and things were already looking up. First spin of the box and out pops the Hellion. My luck was finally changing. This could be the run. I also very quickly learned that the Hellion was in fact going to be my wonder weapon for this challenge, and that the Circuit's Kiss was no longer needed, as I was able to take down multiple enemies at once with just 2 rockets, and if my aim was on point, sometimes a single rocket was enough. There was one pretty big glaring problem though. That was ammo. My lack of ammo in the Hellion actually ended up leaving me stranded in Odin's temple, and I ended up taking it down. But the real problem here was going to be getting that ammo back. I realized that I hadn't seen a single drop in any of my attempts so far other than the nuke. Now I knew I didn't have the settings set to nuke drops only, but they were in fact the only drops I was getting, meaning that literally every box weapon was going to be useless, as I had no other way of getting ammo for those weapons, and I was quickly realizing just how screwed I was. This didn't entirely stop me though, as I bought myself the Maddox off of the wall, just so I had something, and it was pretty useless at killing the Blightfathers, but it was good enough to get me the points I needed to Pack-a-Punch the Hellion. After a second down and plenty of bullets later, I had enough cash in my pocket and I headed straight for the Pack-a-Punch, threw the Hellion in, and for the first time in this entire challenge, I finally felt like I had a little bit of safety and a fighting chance. That lasted for roughly 4 minutes before I ran out of ammo once again with the Hellion, and I was completely screwed, to which I then died in round 8 with a grand total of 61 kills. The next 6 attempts all went pretty much the exact same way. Get a promising gun from the box, Pack-a-Punch it, feel safe and confident for a few minutes, and then have it all toned down approximately 5 minutes later. Things were not looking good for me. Which leads us into the final attempt. At this point, I had probably tried this 12, 13 times, and not once had I even crossed round 10, let alone get close to 1,000 kills. I mean, overall, I probably had about 700 Blightfather kills, you know, just across a dozen or so attempts, but the tank was running empty and I was ready to call it quits. I had changed the rules God knows how many times in between runs to even the playing field, and I was still getting my ass kicked, but this was it, the last attempt. It started off, as they all did, taking out the first round or 2 in the starting arena. I then moved to the box where I got myself the Homunculus, the Hellion, and the Tiger Shark. I grinded together some points, and this time instead of rushing Pack-a-Punch, I opted for a different approach and bought some perks. Stamina Up and Bandolier Bandit were the perks I chose, and I think they speak to themselves as to why. We made it to round 6 with all of our lives intact, but I had completely run out of ammo, due to our once again lack of max ammo drops. Therefore, I put a bit of distance between me and the Blightfather so I could spin the box, where I got the Reaver crossbow. Nothing incredible, but it'll have to do. But of course, the Reaver has about as many bolts as I have brain cells, and before long I was needing a new gun, to which we got the Cap 40 from the box. Surprisingly, the Cap had a bunch of ammo and was also rather strong, but all good things come to an end sooner or later, and we end up taking our first down on round 7, and we lose both of our perks, leaving me once more completely screwed. I was so screwed, in fact, I had to take our second down of the game just merely seconds after being revived, as the Blightfathers decided to just surround me and wait, which was honestly just kinda nice of them, you know? So with 1 life and no bullets to my name, I looked to the Hammer of Valhalla to help me out, which was absolutely useless, and it just tickled the Blightfather and he slapped me around like the little bitch I am. New year, same old pain, and that's that. I really did think after defeating 1,000 Brutuses that this would just be a walk in the park. Clearly not. Oh well, I guess we'll just have to go and kill 1,000 werewolves next.